Welcome to the Security Nexus Explainer, where we transform complex national security sources into clear, actionable knowledge. Let's jump right in. So think about this monumental question for a second. How does an intelligence service bounce back from a truly catastrophic failure to predict an invasion, only to turn around and decisively influence the greatest land clash in human history? It's a pretty wild turnaround, right?
But before we unravel that mystery, I want to quickly welcome you and give you some context. The Security Nexus is a Maryland-based national security consultancy. We specialize in strategic advisory, education, and public engagement. Through podcasts, blogs, training, and consulting, we provide insight into the evolving landscape of cyber threats, hybrid warfare, and strategic security policy. Our mission is to inform, educate, and empower both professionals and the public through clear, accessible, and actionable knowledge. We highly encourage you to visit thesecuritynexus.net to learn more.
Okay, today's explainer is based entirely on a highly revealing primary source. We're looking at Volume 4 of Historia Rosyjskiej Wnętrznej Rozwiedki Alcherki w Szesti Tomach, specifically the 1941 to 1945 years. This was edited by Yevgeny M. Primakov and published in Moscow in 2014. What makes this so fascinating is that it's the official institutional history published by Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service, the SVR. We are going to impartially examine the historical events described in this volume, but more importantly, what the SVR's own interpretation reveals about how they understand their history, their massive institutional failures, and their ultimate evolution.
Here is our roadmap for today. We'll cover the shock of June 1941, learning the right lesson, cashing in on the Cambridge spy ring, the triumph at Kursk, deception as a strategic art, and finally, institutional learning under fire.
Let's start with Section 1. June 1941. Intelligence wasn't the problem.
A lot of people think the Soviets were completely blind before Operation Barbarossa, but actually, Soviet intelligence repeatedly warned of the impending German invasion. The collection network was working. On June 9th, a reliable diplomat warned an attack was just days away. On June 16th, the Berlin Residentura sent an urgent flash message confirming Hitler's final decision. Stalin was receiving numerous, accurate reports. The data was absolutely there.
The man tasked with delivering this ominous news was Pavel Fitton. He was the young head of Soviet foreign intelligence, having been thrust into the role after the devastating purges of the late 1930s. On June 17, 1941, Fitton was called to an urgent meeting in the Kremlin. He walked in and personally vouched for the reliability of these warnings, laying the raw intelligence directly in front of the highest levels of Soviet leadership.
And right here is where the system completely broke down. Despite the overwhelming data, Stalin just flat-out dismissed Fitton's accurate warning. According to the SBR's own history, Stalin looked at the report and declared it was simply English disinformation designed to provoke a war. "Disinformation, you may be free to go," he told Fitton. 5 days later, the catastrophic surprise attack commenced exactly as the intelligence had predicted.
So, the absolutely crucial point we must take away from 1941 is this. Raw collection without rigorous synthesis and analysis is not intelligence. The problem wasn't a lack of information. The problem was the total absence of an institution capable of evaluating conflicting reports and presenting a synthesized authoritative assessment to leadership.
Moving to Section 2. Learning the right lesson.
While the official text is remarkably candid about how this happened, it attributes the 1941 warning failure to a few structural catastrophes. First, the devastation of the Great Purge, which obviously decimated the ranks and bred a massive culture of fear. Second, the loss of experienced officers who actually knew how to handle agents. But most importantly, and they stress this, it was the complete absence of a dedicated analytical subdivision. Without analysts, raw reports were just noise. To fix this, they underwent a monumental institutional reform during the war. This wasn't just a quick adaptation, it was a fundamental shift. Pre-1943, raw, unvetted reports went directly to national leadership, which practically forced policymakers to act as their own intelligence analysts. Post-1943, they built the info department. This was a dedicated analytical engine designed specifically to funnel raw intelligence, synthesize it, separate fact from fiction, and deliver finished intelligence. It's a real game changer.
Section 3. Cashing in on Cambridge.
Let's talk about how they fueled this new analytical engine. Enter the Cambridge Five. Members of this infamous spy ring, like Kim Philby and John Cairncross, provided Moscow with unprecedented access to British secrets. Cairncross, in particular, with his knowledge of German and his mathematical skills, found himself working deep inside British intelligence. He was practically handed the keys to the kingdom.
Just consider this incredible flow of intelligence. First, the German military transmits their operational plans using the highly complex Enigma cipher machine. Second, British cryptographers at Bletchley Park intercept and decrypt these communications. Third, John Cairncross, operating inside Bletchley Park, secretly copies these decrypts and passes them to his Soviet handlers. And finally, this raw data is sent straight to Moscow's newly minted INFO department for synthesis.
But here is the key. This highly classified Enigma intelligence from the British was not accepted blindly. Remember the painful lesson of 1941. The info department rigorously verified the Cambridge materials using all source analysis. They corroborated the decrypts with aerial reconnaissance, frontline military intelligence, partisan reporting from behind enemy lines, SMERSH counterintelligence, and deep operational analysis. They took raw intelligence and built a complete, undeniable, analyzed picture.
Which brings us to Section 4. Kursk, intelligence wins before the battle begins.
Operation Citadel, the Battle of Kursk, represents a flawless model of intelligence fusion. The victory there was essentially shaped weeks before the first tank even fired a shot. In May 1943, the Info Department issued a comprehensive analytical brief warning of the specific German attack axes. By June, they were corroborating tips from neutral diplomats, like a Swedish envoy, with those Enigma decrypts. By July 2nd, the Soviet High Command, Stavka, possessed such precise warning intelligence that they constructed massive, targeted defensive belts exactly where the German armor was planning to strike. Intelligence literally won the initiative.
Section 5. Deception as strategic art.
Now, having an analytical engine isn't just about finding the truth. It's also about weaponizing deception. Consider the absolute masterpieces of strategic deception, Operations Monostar and Berezino. Through double agent Alexander Demyanov, the Soviets fed meticulously controlled intelligence to the German High Command. They went so far as to create a completely fake, trapped German unit, supposedly led by a real officer named Heinrich Schürhorn. Because the Germans lacked a robust analytical body of their own to see through the fake resistance networks and radio traffic, they poured vital resupply operations into empty forests, supplying a phantom army. It remains one of history's greatest deception campaigns.
Finally, Section 6. Institutional learning under fire. The SVR volume really allows us to contrast their early failures against their later successes. Look at the institutional failure in Berlin just prior to the war. Resident Amiak Kubalov blindly trusted a German double agent, basically feeding Stalin German disinformation. Now contrast that with the analytical success of officers like Alexander Karakov in the Info Department, who actively deployed all-source analysis to defeat complex deception operations and deliver actionable truth.
Volume 4 lays out a powerful anatomy of institutional adaptation. First, personnel quality dictates capability. You absolutely need analysts who understand the nuance of the data. Second, leadership must embrace harsh truths. Leaders who only want to hear their own assumptions validated will lead their nation straight into disaster. And third, organizational learning is a survival imperative. Institutions only survive because they force themselves to adapt under extreme pressure. I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to apply to your own modern security architecture. Today, we are absolutely drowning in data, open-source intelligence, and cyber intercepts. But are you merely collecting information, or are you actually building the analytical engine required to separate facts from deception and truly understand it? Thank you for joining us for this explainer. Until next time.